Welcome to the HFY Tales channel. Remember to like and subscribe if you like the story. Enjoy and take care.
The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm orange glow across the alien landscape that felt both breathtaking and dangerous. Jagged mountains loomed in the distance, their peaks shrouded in swirling mist that hinted at the storms often found in these parts of the planet. The air crackled with energy, alive with the sounds of exotic creatures that chirped, growled, and roared as if narrating the tales of the wild. Deep in this unforgiving terrain stood Ryu, a human settler, and just moments ago, an unwilling participant in yet another skirmish with the planet's indigenous creatures. He gritted his teeth as he examined the shallow gash on his forearm, a souvenir from the encounter with one of the planet's fierce native beasts. The pain was sharp but manageable, a reminder of how perilous life had become in this alien world. As he grasped his makeshift bandage, torn from an old scavenged uniform, he fumbled to wrap it around the wound, cursing under his breath. "Damn it," he muttered, frustration bubbling within him. Life as a human settler was supposed to be about exploration and opportunity, but every day felt like a battle for survival against creatures that did not care for the intentions of mankind. Just as he secured the bandage, a rustle from the nearby brush made his heart race. Ryu's body tensed, instinctively shifting into a defensive posture. Though he was a seasoned fighter, he could never shake the feeling of vulnerability that came with being on alien soil. To his utter surprise, the source of the noise was not a beast, but an alien girl. She stepped through the foliage with grace, her iridescent skin shimmering like a fluid rainbow under the fading sunlight. Her form was lithe, with elongated limbs and large, expressive eyes that sparkled with curiosity. In that moment, Ryu felt a mix of awe and wariness. "Who are you?" he asked, trying to maintain authority despite his heart racing. Mira did not respond with words. Instead, she tilted her head, observing him with a blend of fascination and concern. As Ryu caught a glimpse of her delicate features, something inside him shifted. A flicker of warmth ignited amid the tension. The alien girl stepped closer, her movements fluid as though dancing through the air itself. Though he was braced for conflict, he felt a strange pull toward her. She pointed at his wounded arm, her brow furrowing in empathy. The inherent kindness etched in her face set him off guard. "What do you want?" he asked again, more gently this time. To his astonishment, she reached out, her slender fingers brushing against the bandage. His instinct was to flinch, but there was an undeniable charm that wrapped around him like a tendril of ivy. With a sudden, impulsive decision, she leaned forward, her warm breath ghosting across his skin, and began to lick the wound. "What the?" Ryu's brain struggled to comprehend the situation. The sensation sent shivers down his spine. Confusion, embarrassment, and an inexplicable thrill washed over him all at once. "Stop," he blurted out. But the words felt hollow as he felt a softness against the skin, Mira tending to his injury with an instinctive gentleness that made his heart race even faster. As she worked, her eyes met his, filled with an intensity that conveyed a depth of emotion he had never anticipated. What was this creature doing? Why did it feel so intimate? In that absurd moment, amid the chaos of their existence, Ryu found a flicker of something he had longed for but never thought he would find, a connection. She paused, pulling back slightly, gazing at him as if searching for understanding. In that shared silence, Ryu's apprehensions began to fade. Desperation for connection, the longing for understanding, for even a fleeting moment on this wild and unpredictable planet, emerged stronger than any fear. As she smiled, natural and radiant, he couldn't help but wonder what strange, beautiful paths lay before them both. But the weight of the moment hung heavy, for he knew that danger loomed outside the warmth of their curiosity. Soon, he would have to confront the realities of the world around him and the divides that existed between them. Still, as she smiled, natural and radiant, he couldn't help but wonder what strange, beautiful paths lay before them both. As the sunlight began to fade, the alien landscape took on a darker hue, the shadows stretching across the ground like fingers reaching for something lost. Ryu could feel the tension of the moment hanging in the air. His pulse quickened, not just from the fresh sensation of Myra's unexpected touch, but from the realization that he stood at a threshold he had never contemplated before. "Are you okay?" he finally asked, breaking the silence that lingered between them. Ryu's voice was cautious but soft, filled with genuine concern. Mira tilted her head again, her large, expressive eyes shimmering with curiosity. She seemed to process his tone rather than the words themselves. There was an intelligence in her gaze that sparked hope within him, an unspoken understanding that transcended their language barrier. Tentatively, Ryu lowered himself to the ground, making himself less imposing. The alien girl mirrored his movement, her grace mesmerizing. As they settled together, the distance between them felt charged with unvoiced possibilities. Using a small, round stone he had picked up earlier, Ryu doodled crude symbols in the dirt next to him, a makeshift attempt to communicate. He drew what he hoped would resemble a smiley face and a sun, glancing up at her now and then to measure her reaction. Mira watched entranced, her own fingers reaching out to trace the designs in the dirt. Her touch was delicate, and with each line she drew, Ryu could see her interpreting his simple drawings, her brow furrowing as she nodded along. "Son," Ryu exclaimed, pointing at the symbol. With a beaming grin, he pointed to himself and then towards the sky. "Ryu," he introduced, splitting his attention between his drawings and her expressions. Mira tilted her head once more, mimicking him, her curiosity undeterred. "Mi-ra," she attempted, her voice soft and melodic, and Ryu's heart leaped at the sound. "Mi-ra," he echoed, savoring the way her name rolled off his tongue, and in that moment, they felt like two explorers discovering the world anew, beyond the confines of their respective realities. Gradually, they began to share more nonverbal cues, gestures, expressions, laughter that danced between them like fragments of a shared language. Ryu demonstrated his refurbished communication by mimicking the sun's warmth, stretching his arms wide as if to embrace it. Mira responded by encircling her own form, mimicking the sun's rays, and laughing softly, a sound like tinkling chimes that resonated deep within him. But then, Ryu's playful spirit bristled with the gravity of their circumstances. The knowledge that he was part of an ongoing conflict weighed heavily on his mind. "A human," he began again, finding his words clumsy in a tangled web of thought. "We fight." Myra's expression shifted, concern etching her features. She shook her head slowly, the soft ripple of her movements echoing a sense of understanding. She pointed to herself and drew a symbol in the dirt that resembled a heart, then to him, and back to her own heart. "Peace," Ryu guessed, his voice low. He sensed that she understood. Their worlds were colliding, and she was offering an olive branch in the form of a simple, profound connection. She nodded enthusiastically, the glint in her eyes bright and hopeful. As Mira caressed her chest with an open palm, he felt a warmth spreading through him, a flicker of something that surpassed the walls of oppression and fear built by their respective species. As the stars began to twinkle overhead, casting ethereal light across the landscape, Ryu felt a growing urge to protect this fragile bond. Life in the colony had already been filled with enough harshness and division. Whatever this feeling was between them, it needed safeguarding. "Stay," he said, his voice firm yet delicate, as he pointed back to the clearing around them. "Together?" Mira clasped her hands together, tilting her head in a gesture he recognized as hopeful agreement, her expression radiating warmth. She slowly extended a hand towards him, a small but significant gesture. As Ryu clasped her delicate fingers in his own, the world around them faded into a blur. They were no longer two disparate beings from warring races. They were two souls seeking solace and understanding in an unpredictable universe. In that moment, the scratch on his arm felt inconsequential compared to the connection blooming between them. But the darkness outside their bubble of safety crept in again, a reminder that peace was often but a fleeting moment. Ryu knew that soon he would have to return to his people, and with that looming responsibility, uncertainty flickered in the back of his mind. Would they ever allow such a connection to flourish? "I'll find a way," he whispered as the stars twinkled like 1,000 tiny promises overhead. The night deepened, wrapping the alien world in an ethereal embrace of shadows and starlight. Ryu and Mira shared stories in their unique language, the laughter and gestures weaving a tapestry of understanding that felt fragile yet incredibly profound. For the first time in a long while, Ryu felt a sense of peace settling in his heart, despite the uncertainty looming like a cloud over the horizon. But just as the warmth of their connection enveloped him, the tranquility shattered. The distant rustle of leaves and the deep guttural growls echoed in the night, sending a shiver down Ryu's spine. The tranquility of the moment where they had been lost in each other suddenly shifted back to the harsh reality he had tried to forget. "Mira," he whispered, instinctively pulling back as he scanned the darkness for the threatening source of sound. The soft spark of joy in her gaze turned to concern, her eyes darting to the shadows. Suddenly, a group of human settlers emerged from the underbrush, their figures illuminated by the dim light of their handheld devices. Ryu's heart dropped as he recognized the faces of his fellow colonists. It was a search party, one he had feared would come. They were armed, tensions evident in their postures as they scanned the area. "Ryu," called out one of the men, a close acquaintance, Ethan. "We've been looking for you. You need to come back. This place is dangerous." Ryu felt dread settle like lead in his stomach, aware that they would not understand the bond he had forged with Mira. They saw her as a threat. She was an enemy, not the gentle soul who had dared to touch his wounded arm and mend it in her own way. "No," Ryu protested, stepping protectively in front of Mira. "She's not dangerous. We can be." "Move aside," Ethan barked, raising his weapon defensively. His voice was laced with confusion and anger. "What are you doing?" "She's one of them." Mira cowered slightly behind Ryu, awareness of the human tension making her shrink back. Ryu turned to her, desperation etched into his features. "Stay back, Mira. Please." Ryu's heart raced at the sight of his fellow settlers, their faces filled with fear and misunderstanding. He could see their bodies tense, ready to attack at any moment. Did they not see what he saw? Did they not comprehend the tenderness he had experienced that night? "I'm not leaving her," Ryu shouted, his voice rising above the clamor of hostility. "There's a chance for us to find peace, to understand each other." "Peace?" Ethan laughed bitterly. "You think we can live alongside those beasts? After everything they've done? They don't want peace. They want our land and our lives." The air felt electrified, the conflict between the settlers and the alien tribes like a pulse throbbing beneath the surface of every encounter. Ryu's stomach churned as desperation surged through him. He refused to succumb to the prejudice that had defined interactions between the two worlds. Mira took a step forward, cautiously peering around Ryu. She raised her hands, palms open, as if trying to plead with the settlers. Though she didn't speak their language, her intent was clear, a non-threatening gesture meant to convey peace. Ethan's eyes widened in alarm as he aimed his weapon at her. "Get back. Don't move." "No." Ryu stepped in front of her, heart pounding. "Please, just listen." Before he could say more, chaos erupted. The settling tension burst into conflict as the settlers misinterpreted Myra's gesture. The sound of a weapon firing shattered the night, and Myra's eyes widened in alarm. A projectile whizzed past Ryu, narrowly missing him, and struck a nearby tree. Ryu shoved Mira down, protective instincts surging like fire through his veins. "Run!" he shouted, determined to shield her from harm. Mira, realizing the danger, pulled at Ryu's arm. Her eyes shimmered with fear. She echoed a word in her own language. It seemed to mean stay. But Ryu would not hear of it. "Get out of here. I'll hold them off," he insisted, his voice trembling with the weight of his desperation as he scanned for an escape route. In her eyes, he saw a myriad of emotions, fear, confusion, and a glimmer of resolute understanding. But the realization that she was part of a conflict bigger than them both hung heavy in the air. With swift motions, Ryu pushed her towards a nearby thicket. "Mira, go," he urged again, feeling a hopelessness crawl up his spine. Finally, she hesitated only a moment longer before dashing into the shadows, her figure disappearing in the twilight. Ryu turned to face the advancing settlers, ready to protect her, but deep down, he felt the imminent weight of conflict consume him. "Get back!" one of the men shouted again, pushing forward. Ryu knew he had to stand his ground. The connection he had forged with Mira was worth fighting for. "I won't let you hurt her," he yelled defiantly, gripping a branch tightly in his hand as he positioned himself between the approaching settlers and the path Mira had taken. They had opened the floodgates of conflict, and he felt the pressure of choice ripple through his veins. The battle had begun, not just for survival, but for a chance at understanding, hope, and a fragile bond in a world bound by division. The chaos of conflict swirled around Ryu like a tempest. The fear-driven shouts from the settlers echoed in his ears, fueling his resolve. He gripped the makeshift weapon, a sturdy branch, tight, his knuckles turning white as his heart pounded in his chest. "Step aside, Ryu," Ethan commanded, thrusting his weapon forward, eyes filled with anger and confusion. "You don't know what you're doing. She's not one of us. She's an alien. She's more than that," Ryu shouted, desperation bleeding into his tone as he tried to quell the rising tide of panic within him. "You don't understand what we've experienced together." He searched their faces for any glimmer of comprehension. "She wants peace. Can't you see that?" Ethan shook his head, disbelief hardening his expression. "You're blinded by sympathy. These creatures are dangerous." Ryu's frustration boiled over. "They're not creatures. They're living beings, just like us. If we don't try to understand each other, there won't be peace, only more bloodshed." With every tense moment that passed, the air crackled with unresolved conflict. The surrounding darkness seemed to close in, amplifying the stakes of the encounter. Ryu knew he was fighting not only for Mira, but for a future where humans and aliens could coexist. "Stop!" A voice came from the back of the group, interrupting the buildup of tension. It was Tara, another settler, known for her level-headedness. She pushed her way through the crowd, eyes narrowed at Ethan and the others. "This isn't helping. Ryu isn't wrong to want peace. We are the ones who chose to come here. We can't keep treating them like they're the enemy." Ethan scoffed, shaking his head in disbelief. "Tara, they're savages. They've attacked us before. Look what they did to the crops. Look at their raids. We can't trust them." "But Ryu has seen something we haven't," Tara persisted, glancing at Ryu with a trace of empathy. "We've been fighting blindly, and he's trying to bridge that gap. We can at least consider the possibility that they may not all want war." Ryu's heart raced with a flicker of hope. "Thank you, Tara. We can find common ground if we give it a chance. I can help you understand Mira. I promise that there is good in her." Static filled the air, tension hanging like a heavy curtain. The settlers muttered among themselves, torn between fear and the unexpected notion of understanding. Ryu took a breath, willing to lay it all on the line to protect the bond he had forged. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the clearing from behind Ryu, a tree branch snapping underfoot. He turned to see Myra's silhouette emerging from the darkness, her expression a mix of concern and defiance. "Wait!" she called, her voice a soft yet determined melody that pierced through the tension. Ryu's heart lurched at her fearlessness. Once again, she was stepping into the line of conflict for him. "Mira, no!" Ryu shouted, instinctively raising his branch in protest. "It's too dangerous." But Mira crossed the space between them, undeterred by the hostile faces. With each step, her determined energy shone like a beacon, illuminating the shared space that felt suffocated by animosity. "I am not a threat," she declared in her own language, her voice firm and resolute, though the meaning was clear. She held her hands up, palms open to the settlers, imploring them to see her sincerity. The moment hung suspended, every eye fixated on her. Ryu felt pride swell in his chest. She was embodying the courage that he longed to manifest. "Ryu!" She looked at him, her expression earnest, urging him silently to stand by her side. Ethan bristled, weapon still raised, but the tension in the air seemed to shift. "What do you expect to accomplish, Mira?" he challenged her. "We've seen your kind kill our friends." With an unwavering gaze, and despite her fear, Mira stepped even closer to Ryu, unwilling to back down. "I want peace," she responded, her voice trembling slightly but resolute. She pointed to Ryu, and then to herself, drawing invisible lines across the space that separated them, an unbreakable bond tethering their fates together. As she spoke, Ryu realized something important. They didn't need words. Their emotions were loud enough. He took a step closer to her, instinctively raising his arm to grasp her hand, solidifying their pledge to each other. Their bond felt palpable, a fierce, radiant energy that radiated hope amidst the uncertainty. "Please listen to us," Ryu implored, looking back at the settlers. "Together, we can change the narrative. We can be something greater than enemies." The group of settlers shifted, faces uncertain and conflicted. There was a hesitation in the air, a longing for something more palpable than mere survival. Finally, Tara stepped forward. "What if we try? Just for a moment? Talk to her?" she suggested, her voice steady, but it was evident the crowd needed more convincing. "Are you serious?" Ethan replied incredulously. "After everything? If we keep fighting, we'll destroy everything," Tara countered, eyes filled with determination. "Is that what we want?" Ryu's heart raced as he saw Ethan's resolve falter, uncertainty creeping in. Ryu squeezed Myra's hand tighter, feeling the shared determination bind them together. He could sense that this pivotal moment might reshape everything, a possibility where humans and aliens could unite. "Let's try." Ethan finally relented, lowering his weapon slightly, skepticism still etched across his brow. "But Ryu, you stand between us. If she makes a wrong move, it's on you." Mira nodded solemnly, taking a deep breath as she turned her attention to the settlers. With Ryu's encouragement and the connection they shared, she began to weave the first threads of understanding into their tangled legacy. Together, they stood at the brink of a new beginning, ready to traverse the uncharted territory of acceptance, hope, and the possibility of a future where light could pierce through the shadows of conflict. With hesitant eyes, the settlers watched as Mira stepped forward, and the air thickened with uncertainty. Ryu remained beside her, their hands still connected, bolstering each other's courage. So much depended on this moment. The potential to reshape their futures had rested upon the bridge they formed in defiance of mutual distrust. Mira looked around at the faces before her, gauging the emotions swirling in the night air. She took a breath, still feeling the residual tension from their earlier encounter, but she steeled herself. "I want to understand. Just as you do," she said, though her voice was still in her native tongue. Ryu realized that translating would be necessary. "She wants to know why you fear us," he said, feeling the weight of responsibility burden him as he took on the role of mediator. "She wants to know what we can do together." The hesitation hung thick in the air, and Ryu watched the settlers exchange wary glances. Breaking the silence, one of the older settlers named Graham stepped forward, his brow furrowed with a mix of skepticism and curiosity. "Why should we trust anything you say?" he challenged Mira, his tone laced with apprehension. "Because I have listened," Mira replied, her eyes shining brightly despite the hostility. "I have watched your people struggle. I do not wish to fight. I do not wish harm upon anyone." "Words can be empty coming from your kind," Ethan interjected, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. "You say you don't want to harm us, yet our people have suffered at the hands of your tribes." "Ethan," Ryu said, his voice urgent, "we can't afford to keep blaming them for the actions of a few, just like we aren't defined by the conflict we've been dragged into. Mira is here now, standing with me, choosing to understand." Mira nodded, her gaze focused and reflective. "Every choice has consequences. I want to choose a path where we learn to live. We can all share this world." Ryu felt a glimmer of hope amidst the skepticism. He could sense the embers of potential ignition in the settlers' eyes as they wrestled with their own ideas of fear and empathy. It was Tara who took a step forward once more, fostering a glimmer of understanding. "What if we share stories? Show each other who we really are?" she proposed, her tone softening. "If we share our histories, we might understand why we have come to fear each other." Myra's expression lit up at the idea, and she turned to Ryu, her eyes alight with understanding. "Stories," she repeated, the word warm as it rolled off her tongue. "It's a way to connect." "Exactly," Ryu said, eager to keep the momentum going. "Let's share our histories. Let's find common ground." Graham, his brow still knitted but thoughtful, nodded slowly. "If we're going to do this, We need to start by laying everything out. No more fighting. No more secrets. Just honesty. Heart pounding with excitement, Ryu felt the weight lift slightly from his shoulders. "Mira, would you like to tell them first?" he asked, glancing at her, hoping she would feel empowered to share her world with the settlers. With a deep breath, Mira nodded. She turned to the group and began to speak slowly, using gestures to supplement her words. Ryu stepped in to translate, carefully conveying her tales filled with the spirit of her tribe, the struggles they faced, and the deep connection they had to the land. As Mira spoke of her people's history, their reverence for nature, their communal living, and their pursuit for harmony with the planet, the settlers listened intently. Faces that once bore skepticism began to soften, and Ryu could see curiosity budding anew as they absorbed her story. "And just as you have families, we have families too," Mira explained, her hands animated as she depicted the bond of her tribe. "All life is precious. We understood long ago that to survive together, we must learn from one another." With every word, the air grew lighter, and Ryu felt the seams of division beginning to loosen. They had made a significant step toward forging a new path. "Thank you, Mira," Tara said, her voice gentle. "That was beautiful." And then, as if emboldened by their newfound understanding, Ethan stepped forward, a tentative resolve surfacing on his features. "I'll share too. I'm not proud of what I'm about to say, but," he took a breath, "our world was destroyed before we came here. We blamed everything on the aliens. The grief turned us into something ugly. We wanted revenge for what was taken from us." Ryu stood firm beside Mira, showing her the strength of solidarity. "You're not alone in your suffering, Ethan. We have all faced loss and fear. That's why it's so important for us to change now." With vulnerability pouring out, Ethan shared his experiences, the tragedy of their colony, and the distrust that had taken root. A haunting look crossed his face as he admitted the darkness it had brought into his heart. As he shared, Ryu felt a connection around them begin to weave, a delicate thread strengthening their bridge. And in that moment, he sensed the fear melting away, replaced by a shared yearning to build a future where understanding could foster change. One by one, settlers opened up about their fears, their losses, and their hopes, each cautious admission drawing them closer together. Ryu felt the warmth of community rekindling around them, as if they were being reborn amongst starlit shadows. "Maybe we can learn from each other's stories," Mira said softly, weaving her fingers with Ryu's in a gesture of solidarity. "Maybe we can start by helping one another to heal." And so, beneath the twinkling stars and the shadow of towering trees, they forged an unbreakable bond, not just between Ryu and Mira, but among people who had previously considered themselves enemies. As they shared their histories, breath began to dance between past pain and future possibilities, each person realizing that while they may have once been divided, the dream of lasting peace was beginning to take root. As the stories flowed like a river, washing away the remnants of animosity, Ryu felt a new warmth spreading through the gathering. Laughter bubbled up, mixed with shared tears, as they began to connect on a level that transcended the differences that had once divided them. Ryu observed Mira as she interacted with the settlers, her radiance illuminating the space around her. Each time she laughed or offered her insights, the settlers' expressions shifted. Even those who had once been the fiercest opponents began to embrace the possibility of unity. Tara turned to Ryu at one point, her voice barely above a whisper. "I never realized how much we all share. We have more in common than I ever thought." Ryu nodded, a smile creeping onto his face. "It's amazing how the world has been defined by battles rather than understanding." With the night deepening, the conversations transitioned as they began to propose plans for collaboration. Ryu raised the idea tentatively, but he could feel the excitement bubbling within him. "What if we worked together?" he suggested. "We could create a council, both humans and aliens, dedicated to resolving conflicts, sharing resources, and creating a sustainable future for both our peoples." Myra's eyes lit up. "Yes, we can show them the lands around here, the plants that can heal and feed both of our communities. Together, we can thrive, and perhaps even teach each other our ways." The settlers exchanged glances, some nodding in agreement. The council sounds like a step forward, Ethan replied, the skepticism fading from his voice. We can involve both communities in establishing guidelines that protect both sides. Exactly, Ryu said, feeling the energy in the air shift, igniting a newfound sense of purpose. We need to invite representatives from the tribes so they feel included in the conversations. The group began to buzz with possibilities, exchanging ideas and anxieties, fear slowly replaced by hope. As they debated, Mira and Ryu took in the excitement, their connection deepening as they shared glances filled with unspoken understanding. Though the challenges ahead remained daunting, there was now a shared commitment to pursue this path, to build a future together, rather than retreat into isolation and fear. We can start small, Tara suggested. Let's hold a gathering to introduce each other, a celebration of our cultures with food, music, and stories from both sides. It can help ease the tensions that linger. Ryu's heart raced at the idea. A festival. Yes, it will invite both communities to experience each other rather than fear. He turned to Mira, who beamed at the thought. That will be the beginning, she affirmed, her enthusiasm contagious. Let us show them who we are through connection and camaraderie. The settlers began to brainstorm logistics, excited chatter weaving through the clearing, their voices mingling with the gentle rustling of leaves overhead. Ryu watched as Mira engaged with the settlers, her infectious spirit quelling any leftover wariness. They were now collaborators in a dream bigger than themselves. But as the initial excitement began to settle, Ryu couldn't shake the underlying pressure of reality. While they shared a vision, there were still deep-rooted prejudices prevalent within both communities. As if sensing his thoughts, Mira turned to him, placing a hand gently on his arm. "Do not let fear consume you," she said softly. "Together, we're creating something meaningful. Nothing worth having comes without challenges." With her words, Ryu felt the weight of his worries lessen, replaced with a growing determination. "You're right. We'll face whatever comes together." As darkness began to give way to early dawn, friendships were forged and promises made, a beautiful tapestry woven of hope and resilience. Ryu, Mira, and the settlers were now allies in the face of adversity, ready to walk uncharted paths toward understanding. As the first light pierced through the horizon, they stood together as a testament to what was possible. A human and an alien, no longer defined by the boundaries of their races, but by their shared humanity. The sun broke over the horizon, spilling amber light across the alien landscape as the day of the festival approached. Excitement crackled in the air, and a subtle hum of camaraderie reverberated among the settlers and Myra's tribe. They had worked tirelessly over the last few days to prepare for this celebration, each moment filled with laughter and the promise of connection. Ryu stood at the center of a large clearing they had chosen for the gathering, taking a deep breath as he surveyed the preparations. Colorful banners adorned the trees, and tables filled with food from both cultures lined the edges of the clearing. The scent of alien spices and traditional human fare filled the air, a delightful mingling of aromas that promised a feast like no other. Mira appeared at his side, wearing a flowing garment crafted from brightly colored fabrics that mirrored the colors of her skin. She looked radiant, a living embodiment of unity and hope. "It's beautiful," she said, eyes sparkling as she took in the sight. "We did this together," Ryu replied, feeling a swell of pride. The festival represented a fresh start, an opportunity for both communities to share, interact, and dismantle the barriers that had long divided them. As assembled participants began to arrive, Ryu felt a flutter of nerves. Would everyone embrace this moment? Would they welcome the potential for change? He looked into the sea of faces, seeing an array of expressions: cautious excitement, curiosity, and a glimmer of hope. Ethan moved to stand beside Ryu, his demeanor shifting from uncertainty to optimism. "I think this could be the beginning of something incredible," he said, surveying the growing crowd. "Let's make sure it is," Ryu replied, purpose threading through his voice. When the time came, Ryu took the lead, addressing the gathered crowd. "Welcome, everyone. Today, we come together not as human and alien, but as neighbors, friends, and together as one community. Today represents a chance for new beginnings." Applause erupted among the crowd as Mira stood beside him, her presence a calming force that resonated across the clearing. Afterward, Mira took to the center to share stories of her people, weaving beautiful narratives of their history and traditions, aided by Ryu's translations. The settlers listened intently as her tales unfolded, filled with the values of kinship and understanding, each story a thread binding them closer together. Following Mira's storytelling, the settlers introduced their own traditions. Music and dance radiated joyful abandon from the humans as they showcased their cultural heritage. Ryu watched, heart swelling with gratitude. He felt the barriers of misunderstanding crumbling away. Laughter spilled forth, bright and genuine, as people danced and shared food from their hearts. Throughout the day, laughter echoed in the clearing, games were played, and participants connected in a way that had once seemed impossible. They moved as one fluid entity, a mixture of rhythms and stories blending together like the melodies in a breeze. As twilight descended, the festival culminated in a ritual of unity, a ceremonial lighting of lanterns, symbolizing hope and new beginnings. Each person decorated a lantern with their thoughts and intentions before casting it into the night sky, illuminating their shared aspirations. With the lanterns ascending, Ryu turned to Mira, who radiated with joy. "We've found a way forward," he said, awe sweeping through him. "I can't believe how far we've come." "This is only the beginning," Mira replied, her eyes reflecting the lanterns soaring above them. "We will continue to build understanding and compassion together. As long as we hold on to hope, anything is possible." Ryu felt a swell of determination ignite within him. Together, they had started something remarkable, a journey toward a future where fear and animosity were replaced with empathy and connection. As the last lantern faded into the starlit sky, Ryu and Mira stood hand in hand, surrounded by the warmth of their community. In that moment, they were no longer defined by their species, but by their shared humanity, a perfect amalgamation of hope and promise, lighting the way for generations to come. Their expedition together had only just begun, and whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, united as one.